Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News show. We have another of our interviews with CEOs of junior mining companies that have good stories, and here to tell it is Darwin Green, CEO of the company. Thanks for joining us, Darwin.
Yeah, hey, great to connect again, Allan.
Oh, good. So you had some news out last week. In addition to the high grade hits, what sort of stood out to me was the continuity of that Ellis Zone is starting to shape up quite nicely. Can you give us some color on the results and the Ellis Zone?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, you framed it perfectly there. It is shaping up nicely. We ended last season with a boomer hit, but one intersection does not a deposit make, as I like to say. And so we started, we had a news release a few weeks back with our first results, and they looked promising, and we could see that it had some legs to it. And this is just, I guess, reaffirming that. We've stepped out again, and we've got more strong results. I think we've released 14 holes to date from the zone. We've got a whole bunch more pending that are in the labs, and no, it's great. It looks like a bona fide second deposit emerging now. They're fantastic results by any measure, and it's off to a great start.
Yeah, last year you hit a monster in that 500 grams over multiple meters. But you were kind of hampered because you got those results after the season was over. So this is your really first crack at getting back into that now called Ellis Zone.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess for your listeners, it's an area or part of a broader prospect area that we've referred to as Difficult Creek or the DC prospect. And it's a little bit of a pun in there. The Ellis Zone, if you look at the it's the EZ zone, so Difficult Creek just got easy.
Well,
but yeah, to your point, like it was an outstanding drill intersection by all measures. I mean, it was the third best drill hole drilled anywhere on the planet last year, according to some groups. And it set the bar obviously incredibly high, but you didn't know if it was a one-off. Obviously you're not going to get those kind of results with every hole. But we now have 7 holes out of the total number of holes that have been drilled here that have better than 100 gram meter kind of product. That's when you take the gold equivalent grade and you multiply it times meters of the full intersection. And that's pretty impressive. There's some mines that never get over 100 gram meters, and we're starting already with a bunch of holes. And really that speaks to the pedigree of the prospect. There's some folks use those sort of metrics to kind of gauge the ultimate upside potential, and there's a lot of, you can't put too much weight onto it, but it is interesting to note, there's groups that have compiled discovery type intersections, within Canada over the last 30 years. And, for the deposits that eventually grow to be 2 million ounces plus, there's a shocking number of them that started out with results that were better than 100 gram meters. Whereas there's a surprising number that are less than that, that don't make that kind of threshold. And I'm not trying to say that guarantees a 2 million ounce plus deposit, but it does highlight that when you get those kind of results, they're generally associated with bigger, more robust systems. It's incredibly early days for us here, but we really like what we're seeing. We're being able to define some dimensions, some geometric kind of control on the system. So that's giving us the ability to continue to step out and grow the system. And it's a huge advancement for the project as a whole to kind of show that, yes, definitively, we have a second deposit in the making. We don't know yet if it's, what the ultimate size is going to be, based on what we see in the overall scale of the alteration at Difficult Creek. We have high hopes that we've got a lot of room to grow this thing. But it's, right off the hop, this is a huge win because it's demonstrated that the property as a whole has that ability to have multiple deposits.
And when I'm watching high grade discoveries, that continuity speaks volumes to me. When you get sporadic hits, it's hard to mine sporadic hits of high grade, at least profitably. And, so if you get that, so far you've got a nice zone along strike, and from top to bottom, it's starting to show good continuity. So that's the direction that I care most about.
Yeah, and we are seeing the system in every one of these holes. The grade will vary to some degree, as is, that's the nature of the beast with gold systems. We have so much continuity of this higher grade so far that it's a very, very good indication. And we got decent width. We're kind of, assuming from based on what we see today, sort of the true width of the core of the zone of the best looking stuff is sort of on the order of 10 to 15 meters. So that's when you're looking at the grades that we have is very, very healthy. A lot of these systems be mined at 2 or 3 meters. So we actually are seeing a fairly wide system, not quite as wide as JT, the main deposit yet. But we also think we're at the very uppermost reaches of the system. So we think there's a lot of room at depth, a lot of room laterally, but it's only going to be proved up with more drilling. And, fortunately, we're in a good position where we've got a really good cash treasury to continue tackling this thing.
So you kind of got both directions to go there. You can go over towards Milkbone, and then you can go deeper into the system the other way.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And, we're with each season, we get more information. With each drill hole, we learn more about the system. It clearly is part of, in our view anyways, the evidence is suggesting that it's one big system between Milkbone, which is over a kilometer away, Middle Difficult Creek, which is now being referred to as Ellis Zone, but it keeps going to the north quite a ways. It's about a 3-kilometer trend, and we've done very limited work in that direction. Really strong alteration where you get little windows through the overlying rock sequence. So, yeah, we really like it. It's what it offers, as a geologist approaching these things, right? You're always looking for sort of a sense of scale to the overall system. And, the alteration, that hydrothermal alteration, the clay and the sericite and the pyrite that affects the rocks around a deposit, oftentimes will be much, much larger than the deposits themselves. And so if you can see that type of a system where veining and mineralization sporadically exposed over, in this case, about 3 kilometers by 1 kilometer area, that gives you confidence you're into an area that has a lot of potential. Then you add upon that, obviously, these kind of drill intersections where you're hitting really strong mineralization. Admittedly, we've only stretched it out about 125 meters along strike and 100 meters down dip. That's still quite significant. But it's telling us now we've got great grade over great widths that has continuity within this broader system. And whether all of these, I doubt we're going to see one continuous ore body. What I expect you're going to see is a bunch of deposits within this environment that collectively can add up to an awful lot. And but yeah, we're super excited. It's JT deposit is still kind of the flagship itself. We have plus million ounces there. We're actually drilling there to grow that as well. But this is just a huge development to show that we now have a second deposit in the making. And I'd be shocked if there wasn't more to be found as well. Not to think too far ahead. We should be focusing on growing this one now. But
you mentioned something there that I'm not sure all of our audience understands. But when you talk about big alteration, what that means to the non-geo out there is that these fluids that bring the high-grade gold, they interact with the rock, and it creates a chemical reaction that alters things. And at the your main zone, where you have the resource, did you see a big alteration zone there as well?
We do. It's actually smaller than what we see at DC, but we do. But that might be in part the exposure. But we do see it. It's a bit more intense where we see it. Well, actually, that's not entirely true too. There's slight differences, but there's a lot of similarities between the two. But the overall total footprint of what we see at DC is probably one of the biggest on the property. So it bodes well that we now are defining, mineable grades over mineable widths type of intersections. We're not saying it's a mine yet, but it has those characteristics within this broad alteration is gives us a lot of confidence that we're going to continue to find more. So it's a wonderful start for us here.
The reason I asked that, Darwin, is you were talking earlier about learning as you go, and you kind of have an advanced degree a little bit because you have that zone, that main zone with the resource on it. Then you've got the look-alike kind of rock and the alteration. So you're not going at it blindly.
Actually, very well said, Alan. It's a really good point. Is we do benefit from having a deposit model. The best deposit model for our deposit on the property is the one we have, and it's a very distinct and unusual deposit. So it doesn't fit perfectly into the classic models. It kind of shows elements of or characteristics of what we refer to as a VMS, or volcanogenic massive sulfide, but also characteristics of what we refer to as epithermal. And each form in slightly different kind of geological settings. But in this particular case, we have a very specific set of characteristics that we see at the deposit. One is this anhydrite alteration. It's quite unusual geologically in terms of the volumes we see and the form that it occurs. So we see the exact same anhydrite alteration at Ellis Zone that we see at JT. We get nodular, we get vein. It's kind of a peripheral alteration phase to the deposit. It tells us there's probably seawater sulfate that's come into the system. That's kind of one of the VMS-like characteristics. The other VMS-like characteristic is the really strong base metal content with the gold. We're always talking gold. Some of these hits here, we had 54 grams gold over, 3.9 meters. We had 21 grams gold over, almost 7 meters, and, the 500 grammer. But all of those are coming with, anywhere from sort of 2 to 10% zinc and copper.
Wow.
So that's very unusual to get that zinc and gold association. Again, that's
Especially, well, in a VMS, you would see zonation of grade that creates as this zinc and silver zone area, and then a copper and gold.
Yeah.
But you're getting zinc and high grade gold, which is, I can
atypical,
understand
for sure.
why.
It's not common, for sure, and but we see it in both places now. And so one of the aspects of a VMS sort of system is it's very common that they occur in clusters. You'll get one deposit, you will find more around. It's one of the attributes, not always, but more often than not, you do see that. And so we shouldn't be surprised to be seeing other deposits or systems along trend from the main one. Similar in epithermal vein systems, oftentimes you have kind of a broad vein field with multiple veins. So both of them share that characteristic. They also, there's a certain area you want to be looking. So in VMS systems, there's, they form at the seafloor. There's a certain time stratigraphic horizon where, that system seems to be going off in lots of places, broadly speaking. So when you're, over the millions of years, you get layers of rock, and then you fold and turn that sea into mountains, you're trying to track this horizon across the property, which will often be buried. It sticks its nose out here or over here, but otherwise you're going to be targeting that specific horizon. And so that's an attribute we sort of see here as well, and that there's a specific package of rocks. I mean, we still have some work to do to really fine tune some of this, but it looks, on initial take here, is that we're in, broadly speaking, the same package of rocks. That also plays out for epithermal, because epithermal, unlike VMS, where it's coming out and meets what was the seafloor at some moment in time, with epithermals, when they're forming, you usually have some sort of vertical range that's the best area for precipitation of gold. It might be a few hundred meters, vertically. With intermediate sulfidation, it can be really deep expansion. With low sulfidation, you've got a narrower band. But whatever the case, you've got sort of a paleo depth, if you will, where you want to be looking in the system. And so for both of these models, whichever one you apply, that's allowed us to target in where JT sits and look for that same sort of depth within the stratigraphy and stratigraphic horizon. And so that's
so you've got lots of indicators where you are in that stratigraphy.
Exactly. Because you think you see all this great geology in these mountains, you do, but it's just a 2D slice, right? And that particular horizon will only stick its nose out in a few select spots, and then you've got your ore deposit.
Like your Ellis, you've got it on one side of the mountain, then sticks out again at the.
Well, exactly. Yeah, over at Milkbone, it goes through the mountain and comes out the other side, and lo and behold, you got nice rock and golden soil samples associated with that. So when we're drilling now, we're now trying to test these targets at depth where it's buried or blind, but we have a great model to work with. So we've got a wonderful framework to continue that will only get better with time as we keep exploring this property. So it's really coming along. It's and we're there's a ton more other prospects that we're advancing down the pipeline as well. Again, not to lose sight of the significance of what we found already. And, that's the priority now, is kind of growing that, but we are stretched in terms of, well, we need to keep adding ounces at our main resource. So we've been drilling there. We've been wanting to get our arms around this and see what it's got, where it can go. And we also want to advance a few other prospects a little bit further along so that, we have enough information that can help us plan for next year.
Well, and that comes to another point about high grade is predictability. You guys are getting a handle on the geological story. You've got the big push with the knowledge you learned from the resource. And by the way, folks, to have a 1 million ounce resource of 10 grams is pretty special. And it's could be easily accessed, and it's thick and it's open. So that's a hell of a good resource as a base case argument for you being undervalued. But then you've got all this other perspective area that you've now proven that it's perspective with what you're seeing at the DC and Ellis Zone.
No, exactly right, Alan. No, that's exactly, you hit it on the head there. And, the real key differentiator for the main deposit that we have, it is one of the higher grade undeveloped gold deposits that's better than 1 million ounces in North America. But there are some other 10-gram systems. They're nice. But really what separates it from the pack is its true width. I mean, it's about 10 times thicker in terms of mineable width than most other high-grade vein system. Most high-grade vein systems are going to be in the sort of 2 to 5 meters width. We're 40 meters true width.
And that makes a big difference when it comes to mining that stuff. That's what
absolutely. It's all about margin. I don't care what business you're in. It's about margin. And everyone wants size, but if you've got a 3 million ounce deposit, but you've only got $300 margin on the ounces you're producing, it's worth less than 1 million ounces when you've got a $1,000 margin on the ounces you're producing. And there's a couple of reasons why it's so attractive from a mining cost and mining engineering standpoint. And one is you can access it laterally and mine your way up. So instead of going deep down into a mine and ramping your way out, one, sinking either a expensive shaft or a very long ramp to get down and all the power it takes to get that ore out. In this case, you're letting gravity do a lot of the work for you. It's lower upfront capital to build. But because it's so wide, it allows you to do sort of more bulk style underground mining, whether it's long hole open stope or even other more lower cost versions. And so we're starting to look into those mining methods, but because it's so thick and it's so high grade, it really gives you the opportunity to have a very high margin type of system. And, the other thing you look at is how many ounces are there per vertical meter. In most veins, think if it's a 3 or 4 meter wide vein system, which is a healthy width for a 10-gram system. So say some are even narrower than that. Well, you got to do 10 times the development laterally to access the same amount of ounces as you would for a 40 meter wide system, right? So, and that's all mining costs. The amount of you're punching out, underground access to get in there and stope the area out. Well, you only have this much length that goes back and forth on something that's subvertical, super thick. You can take it out in big batches. So you only have a handful of headings. It really does reduce your costs in a big way. And so that's going to be part of our messaging over the next 6 months.
That begs the question, when are you going to start throwing some economics at this to social? It's hard for me because I'm always worried about do people start looking at it as only as a development story, but you're still wide open at depth. And there seems to be a parallel feature to that, and maybe they connect at depth. So, but seeing that kind of potential, you kind of want to throw numbers at it.
Well, that's it. If the market doesn't get it, which it clearly doesn't right now based on our valuation, then maybe we have to do something. I hate doing PEAs too early in a project because it puts a pin in them. And clearly, we started this year. I got asked this question, did an interview with Rick Rule, and he's like, so, are you going to do it? And my answer was, it's really going to depend on how the season plays out. If we start to see, Difficult Creek and the Ellis Zone starts to emerge as something that we think it has the potential to, then it doesn't really make much sense to charge out and do an economic study because clearly you have another deposit that's growing rapidly, and it,
And that could have a big effect on the economics.
yeah. So your economic study is stale dated immediately, but whatever the case, we've done a lot of baseline environmental work and engineering work this past season, with the objective of de-risking the project. We did a bunch of metallurgy. We've got an updated resource. We've had other engineering work going on, looking at, ultimately, if you want to get this to feasibility and mine decision, let's work our way back from there, what we need. And so we're starting, we've transitioned to some degree from just a raw explorer. We're still full on an explorer, but we're also sort of an early developer at the same time, if you think in terms of our psyche and what we're doing. So.
Well, it sure, the resource looks special. The exploration potential looks special. I don't want to take up too much of your time, Darwin. Why don't you give us a rundown of where you are in your drilling, how much is pending, how much have you released to date?
Yeah, boy, I should have these numbers better than I do, but I know in the Difficult Creek area, we've got more than 35 holes drilled, mostly at the Ellis Zone. So we've released 14. So that means there's 20 holes to come there, assays. We drilled about a half dozen holes at Milkbone. We drilled one hole at Kona, and we've been drilling at the JT deposit as well. So there's lots of assays to come. Our on-site lab sped things up, but and allowed us to really kind of follow up with what we wanted to do here at DC. There were a few kinks getting it set up, so we were a couple of weeks behind. But I'd argue we're in much better shape than a lot of juniors in terms of news flow there.
So you should have news out over the next few months.
Exactly, and I expect we'll have everything out by the time you hit December. That's our hope, anyways. I mean, it might leak in December a little bit. Certainly, you won't be waiting until March like we were last year. And then you're gonna have to ask yourself, is it time to do another resource update or not? I don't know. I think it's so early at Ellis Zone that you're gonna wait, but and give yourselves one more year. But lots of work to keep us busy in the off season. We'll drill here. We'll see. I was initially planning to push right to the end of October. I think in the condition of this market, clearly we're not getting rewarded for results. So we're trying to find that right balance of collect the information we need, but keep the treasury healthy. We expect to have about 10 million, a little better than 10 million in the till at the end of the year. So we're
going hard, Darwin. I think the winds are about to start blowing in our direction. You've got the Bank of England has now gone to an unlimited stimulus. You've got the Bank of Australia that announced that they're only doing a quarter point. You've got the Credit Suisse is showing problems. UBS is showing problems. Deutsche Bank is showing problems. These are all interconnected. And what they tell me is that gold is going to benefit because what has been causing problems has been the power of the US dollar. And what has been fueling the power of the US dollar is the interest rate increases. So I think the Fed has to pivot soon, and that will be very bullish for gold. So get as much as you can done, Darwin.
Yeah.
Over the next...
Well, thanks. I mean, we are in a very fortunate position that we're not vulnerable in terms of cash in the bank. So I'm a believer, as you are, that sometime in the next 6 months we are going to see a turnaround, and gold will benefit from that in a big way. But as a CEO managing the financial health of the company, I've got to measure that against a bit of defense as well. And I like to leave myself in a strong position, and we are in a very enviable position in terms of the cash position we'll have, regardless of how late we push the drilling this season.
Perfect. Yeah, well, you said something there that Kona target. I remember seeing the geophysics on that, and I think the structural story too points to that being a hell of a target for VMS.
It is. Well, VMS or something else too. High sulfidation epithermal. We're still trying to get our heads around it, but it's a big system, huge alteration system. It's an intriguing one. So and there's we keep finding more while we're out there too in terms of other prospect areas. There's lots to keep us busy. I haven't even talked about what we've been doing regionally. We actually did a deal with some of the native Corp lands that were north and south of our existing properties. Our existing property is huge, right? We've got lots of room for multiple deposits, truly kind of district scale. but we're actually doing that grassroots recce type work that led to the discovery of GT itself in the 80s, where you're doing, silt sampling in creeks that has never been done before in the same package of rocks. So we like this area, and we think we're going to keep finding more. So
well, it's proven to be a hell of a good area. Speaking of good areas, before I let you go, one more thing. You guys had some property near Snowline, and you did some deals with them, and you got some stock. How much stock did you get in them? Because that's been a monster.
You know what? I'm not sure if that's public, so I will leave that one out there. But we do have stock coming our way, and we got a little bit more coming our way, and it's been nice. And Scott Riddall and crew have done a tremendous job up there. I mean, hats off to them and the success they've had. And what they've really done is I think they've changed people's perception of what reduced intrusive related gold systems can be. It used to be conventionally they're always a 0.5 gram to 1 gram systems, which can be great. They can make phenomenal mines. Fort Knox, Victoria Gold's mine there. But the further you get away from infrastructure, the harder it is to make a 0.5 gram to 1 gram system.
Because Fort Knox is right beside Fairbanks.
Exactly. And so what they've done is they've been able to show you can have 2-3 times the grade. They're drilling these 200-meter plus intersections of 2 to 3 grams. They're not all going to be that high grade, but there's certainly going to be a core there that is. And there's very few stories where you can see in the span of 12 holes have people start talking 5 to 10 million ounces plus. But when you're taking 300-meter step outs and drilling 300-meter intersections, you can build ounces in a hurry if you think it has the continuity in those systems. You expect that. So yeah, I mean, we did a deal with them last year, and on some claims that tied directly onto their existing package. So it's part of I think it's their Ursa property, and I can't remember the name of the other one that we tied into. But what we kept out of that deal were 4 other properties. There were actually sort of either side of the North Canal Road that runs up to Mac Pass, Fireweed Zinc's Mac Pass property. And on there was our most advanced project. We have one golden arsenic soil anomaly that's about 6 kilometers long. We have another one that's a kilometer by kilometer grid sitting right at the apex of a tiny little intrusive. So it's kind of a direct analog or comparable to what Snowline's drilling. You've got golden soil. Can't verify whether we're going to get the kind of grade they've got, but it certainly has every chance to. And I would argue it's one of the better lookalikes out there for what they're doing. And if they continue to have success, and if you could have a Donlin-sized project, but that's not refractory. Donlin's refractory, so it's really expensive. It's 40 million ounces, but you can look at the market cap of Nova Gold, who has 50% of it, to realize the kind of value that can be created in these environments. If you could have a non-refractory system that size, I would have fully expect the real estate in this neighborhood to really enhance in value. So we're deciding what to do with it. We've got it. It was always in our portfolio. It came as a spin out when HighGold was formed. And now we're just trying to daylight some value for it. So we're thinking about how best to do that. Maybe
next year you might get some drills up there.
Well, they're drill ready. We'd have to get a permit in place. So that's something we'll probably look at doing. So whether we drill it or we find a partner for it, we're open to a variety of options, but it's a lot of optionality, I think, for our existing shareholders. Kind of a bonus, much like our Timmins assets are kind of a bonus.
Yeah, well, I like that Timmins stuff a lot. So we'll talk about that later, Darwin. Thanks a lot for your time. Man. I'm going to close it off.
Always, Allan.
Have a great day. I'm going to close it off now. So there you go, folks. HighGold has a $47 million valuation. They've got a 1 million ounce deposit with a resource with a 10 gram grade. It looks like it has all kinds of attributes that will make it a low cost producer. That I like high margin, high grade projects, and especially when they have room to grow. And as Darwin and I were talking, it looks like it has room to grow and something parallel to it. And now they've got this DC area with the Ellis Zone that has kicked out extreme high grade and also continuity of high grade. So I think that that has a lot of legs on it. And then they've got this whole region, or this whole project that has these same kind of rocks and potential. So, you know, as the risk to, or the potential to valuation goes, I think this one's very undervalued relative to their potential. I think it's one that gold investors will do well to own as they keep on putting out more results and doing more work. And they've got a portfolio of other projects too. So, and in Darwin Green, they've got an excellent, and his team, excellent explorationists. So, really solid company for you to take a look at. As always, my shows are for information purposes only. It's important for you to speak with your financial advisors and do your homework. I've done interviews with you, with Darwin on my YouTube channel at Rocks and Stocks News, where we dig into the news releases. You can go check out the news releases and their presentations, and I think you'll understand why I'm so optimistic and bullish on this company. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.